SBC Media.
Welcome to the iGaming Daily Podcast, analysing the news from the betting and gaming industry all over the globe, supported by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market.
Hello, thank you for joining us today on this episode of iGaming Daily, sponsored by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market. I'm Ted Orme-Claye, editor of SBC News, and I'm joined in the studio by Ted Menmuir, SBC Media's editor-at-large, where we're going to discuss Betsson's financial results, which were published just last Friday. The company has had a pretty solid quarter and first start to the year, all things considered, with the same challenges that the industry is facing overall, with changes in regulation across a lot of core markets, a lot of governments looking to hike up gambling tax to fill some gaps in their economies and help drive growth. So amid this challenging sector, Betsson have stood out, of doing pretty well. We're going to be speaking to Pontus Lindwall, Betsson AB CEO, later as well, to hear his perspective on it and quiz him about some of the different market dynamics they're facing and some of their plans. So Ted, you broke the news on SBC today of Betsson's H1 result. Just to start things off, what stood out to you from the result, from the financial report, I should say? What stood out?
Okay, so normally Betsson are always kind of first to go, and if we rewind back to kind of 5 years ago, I always kind of viewed kind of Betsson as the bellwether for European gaming, the first ship out the docks, and they'll kind of tell you what the weather is like. However, I can't kind of view that because they kind of keep on outperforming market expectations, and they kind of keep on beating their forecasts against these very kind of, turbulent kind of conditions we're seeing in the market. So again, this has been their 18th quarter of growth since 2021, which is remarkable. And even the financial metrics look solid. Revenues are above 500 million, and they're putting, a good 20% of that back into the EBITDA at 160. So this is this is a company that's, outperforming kind of even its own expectations. That would be kind of my main view of where kind of Betsson are going. The other factor here is that, again, and I think Pontus will kind of outline it, it's just, it is going to be a turbulent kind of H2 coming up for them. A lot of tax changes coming into kind of markets in Eastern Europe and Western Europe too. And also the launch of Italy's new online gambling marketplace with 36 licenses. So I think kind of that's going to drive up costs.
Yeah, the Italian aspect is quite interesting, isn't it? Because like you say, it's going to be a very competitive market, I think. And it's also one in which, and this is something I've heard some commentators from the market themselves say, is that it's going to be one for the big budget firms, isn't it? It's for your Flutters, your Entains and so on. But also, of course, your Betssons are in there as well. And like you say, are outperforming a lot of people. So it'll be interesting to see how they take that market on. Sorry, Ted, I interrupted you there, please.
No. Yeah, the other thing that kind of jumped out, and I should have actually said this in the intro, is that I think kind of Betsson needed a new market to kind of lighten up its Western or European activities, especially in light of like Nordics being stagnant, them kind of moving out the UK about 3 years ago, and Italy is becoming a more and more important market for them, where they are kind of taking market share. They've got a very solid kind of casino product, and I think they're now trying to kind of advance its sportsbook properties and doing kind of very high profile sponsorships out there. There's still kind of in the background the repeal of the dignity decree that we've kind of reported on. I think Italy's going to become more and more important for them. I think that they're looking kind of at a Western market where if they can take, a top podium position on the online market, that really will impact the valuation of Betsson as a corporation.
And then Latin America is one that stood out as well in this report, I think. It was quite a big growth driver for them, wasn't it? They're obviously, in contrast to a lot of other people, they're taking a bit more of a steady approach to Brazil, aren't they? They're doing some testing. I think they've not fully launched out there yet. I think like they are there, but they're not fully there, basically. Instead, they're going for a lot of the Spanish language markets. Do you think you think this approach will pay off in Latin America as well, and that they might start outperforming some of the international competitors there in the same way they have done in Europe?
I think, answering that question, I think you're going to separate where the Latin American market is. So, yeah, I think you're quite right to say, look, they've gone kind of more down the route of the Spanish market territories, Peru, Argentina, Colombia. I think it's a real kind of shootout in Brazil at the moment. And again, another kind of important factor of the H2s, it's going to tell us, how much the international operators are spending there. How much they're feeding back in terms of EBITDA from Brazil. In the Brazil market, that's changed, significantly from its January launch to July, and it's going to change even more in H2 with potential kind of tax rises and the implementation of, quite severe advertising restrictions. We'll find out in the long term whether, because you could look at this the other way around and maybe Betsson are a bit too late to the market, or maybe they played the right card and waited for the market to cool down.
Yeah, fair enough. I think that's there's a lot of, it's like the usual saying, we don't have a crystal ball, do we? Like, we can't really tell what's going to happen, but I do find their approach to Latin America very interesting, and that is something that we're going to ask Pontus when we get him on. Right, I think we are going to run out of time if we carry on talking amongst ourselves. So you've heard our opinions, and now it's time to go and hear some insights from the man himself, Betsson AB CEO, Pontus Lindwall. Pontus, thank you very much for speaking to iGaming Daily today, just after Betsson has, of course, released its H1 and Q2 financials. So Betsson has really stood out because you've recorded, I believe, 18 quarters of successive growth since 2021. This has been during a period in which a lot of your competitors have faced some significant struggles. How exactly do you explain this?
I think that's the result of decisions we made and actions that we took 5 years ago. We made a lot of changes or even 5 to 7 years ago. We did some organizational changes. We took some decisions, and it took a couple of years until it took off. But now we are harvesting on that, and we are in a much better shape as a company than we were back then.
You've just noted some of the organisational changes you've made. Something quite notable that's happened recently was, well, not necessarily recently, but something notable that Betsson has done was your exit from the Netherlands. What impact has this had, if any, on your Western European market growth profile?
Not much at all, because we never kind of we never fulfilled that acquisitions. We never had any Dutch revenues in the P&L, so it doesn't have any impact at all.
So is the Netherlands, that's obviously become a very competitive market, but it's also quite a high value one for a lot of companies. Is this a market that you're quite happy not being involved in then?
I mean, we had this acquisition going. It took a lot of time, and the market changed during that time as we waited. And it took a very long time, and it consumed money for us and energy and resources. So we decided to back out. That means that we will not go into Netherlands in the short term, but we have not closed the door, of course, on the long term, because we are a global company. We are open for any market that looks as a decent market in terms of conditions for a gaming company like us.
So I guess it's more a case of, like you say, a short-term refocusing on some of your more immediate targets like Latin America and Italy. Is this an accurate statement?
Yeah.
So on this topic of Italy, we've seen that you've doubled down on your Italian investment, but there's also a new regime in Italy, and this is pointing towards a period of hyper competition. How confident are you of standing out among all the other companies that are looking for a bigger footprint in Italy?
I think the competition in Italy is high already now, and there will be a new regulatory regime that will have an impact on the market structure, and we will see how that plays out. But I don't believe that the competition will be so much higher after the new regulatory regime is in place. And as you know, we have done several investments in sponsorship deals and others, and we have a good setup for Italy. So we are very optimistic for the future there.
You mentioned sponsorship there as well. This is quite a core part of your marketing approach, isn't it? Are there a lot of lessons you've taken from some of your more established markets to your new targets in Italy and Latin America?
Yeah, it's been a natural development for us, and in some geographical markets, there has been restrictions on advertising in some kinds of media, and then sponsorships has worked fine. And as we become a global company, it's important for us to be seen globally. And, a sponsorship like Inter or Boca Juniors, that these are global teams, and it puts a certain label of quality to the company as well. So it's a very important part of our marketing and branding strategy.
And if I can just turn to Latin America, this obviously stood out quite a lot in the report. You've had a lot of growth there. But it's interesting that a lot of companies at the moment, I think, are very fixated on Brazil. Whilst Betsson, you guys are targeting more Peru, Colombia and Argentina. What's the rationale behind this?
Yeah, we have a license in Brazil as well. We have experience from newly regulated markets that sometimes initially there's some kind of a marketing war because everybody wants to grab their market shares initially. Then we have seen a little bit in other markets like some kind of regulatory instability, because when the regime is new, it may have to be tweaked a bit and changed. So you don't really know what to invest in. And you also need to have the product fit for the market before you can really go for it. We believe that we have a good product there now, and but we have decided to be a little bit on the sideline initially, and when we feel comfortable, we're gonna start gearing up also in Brazil. But we have a good position in other Latin American markets, and that's where we put the bulk of our money right now.
If I can just quiz you a bit more on your Brazilian ambitions, obviously you've noted that you've got a license there, and there's been a lot of, as you called it, like a marketing war going on in Brazil between a lot of the newcomers. How would you summarize Betsson's progress in Brazil so far?
I would just say that today Brazil doesn't have any impact on the financial figures of Betsson. We're in the initial phase, testing the product, assessing the market, deciding on what to do, looking at what others do. So that's what I can say. It's a passive start for Betsson in Brazil, but I'm not concerned about it. It's actually the other way around. I think it's a responsible way to start off a new market.
So I guess you guys are taking a much more steady and like measured approach, I guess. While a lot of other companies are running straight in, aren't they? Full steam ahead.
Yeah.
So in the rest of Latin America, obviously we mentioned that Peru is quite a big market for you guys, but Peru is also seeing some regulatory changes, which you noted as well. Tax changes are looking highly likely. Do you foresee this having any impact on your Latin American margins?
Every time when there's a change in tax, it has impact on the margins or on the business as such. And in the case of Peru, it's been a little bit not very predictable where it's going to go, and I think that's still the situation. So we will have to wait and see what's going to happen there.
And then if we return to Europe, obviously a lot of Central European and Eastern European markets are quite a big part of your operation there. And some of these are seeing regulatory changes as well, like in Croatia and Serbia. There's a new tax regime in Lithuania as well, I believe. How has Betsson been navigating these changes, and how do you plan to continue navigating them as they roll out?
Yeah, without commenting on the specific tax of the specific countries and the tax changes. So in general, we see that the tax has to be balanced so that it becomes a functional gaming market. If not, then the market will collapse, and then we're not interested in being in the market. And I think in our industry, we often discuss markets like Germany as an example, which has a channelization which is almost nothing. So everybody is playing outside of the regulation, and that cannot be the purpose for any regulation. So it needs to change, and we hope that some markets will look over their tax structure, because they will have to if they want to have a regulated online gaming business.
Do you think that, generally speaking, increases in tax and changes to tax regimes is going to be one of the biggest challenges the industry faces, going forward from this year out?
It's a challenge, but it's not anything new. We have been dealing with the tax changes over the years for a long time. And I mean, if something, we think that it should start to swing back soon in general, so that regulators can proudly say that we have regulated this market and it's a functional gaming market that we have regulated, because this is where it all has to aim for at the end of the day. So,
returning to the topic of sponsorship and marketing that we talked about earlier, we've just had the Club World Cup complete, obviously, with the enhanced format. Betsson has some partnerships with some of the clubs involved in this tournament, didn't you? Has this been a successful tournament for you because of that?
Yeah, in a way, it's a successful tournament in the sense that there was, in a way, a new format, a new tournament coming up in a part of the season which was not too busy. So that's good. I think the interest for the tournament as such was not as high as the more established tournaments that has been around forever, and that's natural. I speak to people. I've heard that people like to see, games between teams from different regions, and that's kind of interesting to see in this format with such a tournament. But we believe that the tournament will have to keep on growing and become more popular, and I believe that is what will happen.
Yeah, as you say, it's still early days in this new format, Club World Cup. But I mean, given that, and given, like you say, there's a lot of less customer familiarity with it, has it still served a decent purpose in, providing a fan engagement bridge between the domestic seasons in the same way that like the Euros and the FIFA World Cup do?
Yeah, it filled the gap for sure. People were watching soccer. So it did its job in that regard. Then again, it didn't create even near the same interest as the more established tournaments, and I think that's natural for such a new format.
And then with this in mind, obviously we've got the FIFA World Cup taking place next year. It's always one of the biggest events in the betting calendar. How are you preparing for that? Do you have any, I know it's early days, but yeah, is there any plans in place? And is there anything that you may have learned from your trading during the Club World Cup that might translate over to this bigger tournament?
I think one thing that we know for sure is that that's going to be a massive tournament with a huge interest. So that's, we can already tick in the box that it's going to be a lot of activity. We will be preparing for that tournament in good time and make sure that we have our products in the best shape, when it happens. But we haven't started other preparations for that, as far as I know, at least.
Okay, thank you, Pontus. That's all I've got time for today. Thank you so much for taking some time out of what I can imagine was a very busy schedule to speak to us on iGaming Daily. It's been a pleasure as always.
Okay, thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to today's iGaming Daily podcast, supported by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market. If you want to find out more about some of the subjects raised today, feel free to explore any of the sites in the SBC News Network or check out the latest edition of the SBC Leaders magazine. Happy reading.